and welcome to episode 3 of the Cluster Buck podcast. Joining us, as always, is Hunter Ziegler in the gray hat, black hoodie, Nico Galdoni in the black hat. Is that orange? Is that an orange shirt?
Orange shirt.
Orange
Tangerine.
shirt. I'm Jordan Blankenship, and joining us today, a guest, Colorado resident and diehard waterfowl hunter, Chad White. He is in the camo. Say hello, Chad.
How's it going, everybody?
Is that a Rocky Mountain waterfowl hat you got on, Chad?
That's a Jordan special.
That's nice.
Who made
That's
it?
a Hunter special.
Jordan special.
I hand sewed it.
See,
I tell everybody that I make them. When you're
Hey,
not
look
around.
on the inside of that. You'll see the stitching for the patch is not very good. Yeah.
It's
That's
ringing
hand sewn.
endorsement of our own product.
Yep. It sure is.
So
where do you get them? Recruitcreative.com.
Yeah, Etsy. You can get them on Etsy. I like that. I like Chad. Me and Chad have never met before. Nico, you've never met him either, but he's already putting plugs in for the store, so I think we're going to get along just fine.
So today's episode, we're going to talk about one of the best kept secrets in waterfowl hunting, and that is the Front Range of Colorado. So northeastern Colorado. Chad, he has been, how long have you been waterfowl hunting out in Colorado?
I've been in Colorado about 4 years now. Before that, took a couple years off traveling for work and such, but grew up chasing waterfowl in PA mostly.
So I think Chad brings a great perspective as someone who's hunted back east. He's hunted kind of all over the country and now hunts pretty hard out in Colorado. One of the cool things about, the Front Range of Colorado, not only just the proximity to the mountains and just like having an awesome backdrop for a lot of the hunts, but the amount of birds that use that flyway, the central flyway. Colorado in itself, CPW, the last survey I could find the CPW did, their midwinter survey, listed almost 500,000 birds. And that was just in the central and northeastern portion of Colorado. So a lot of birds in the state. There's a lot of birds in the city, and there's just really great habitat in the state. And we're going to get into that. And today's will kind of be a little bit of an introduction for people who maybe are trying to come to the state to waterfowl hunt for the first time. Maybe it's on your bucket list. A little bit of a how-to for waterfowl hunting in the state. So let's see. Chad, you gave us an introduction. Do you want to go a little bit deeper about kind of your experience the last 4 years waterfowl hunting? Just kind of some of the, general tactics of, your experience in the state?
Yeah. So, like I said, I grew up hunting in Pennsylvania. Actually, didn't start hunting waterfowl until freshman year of college. So, kind of got a late start coming into it, but grew up hunting deer and turkey and kind of fell right into it. Kind of good niche, being able to hunt multiple things, multiple species, and not just like shooting one deer. But so grew up in PA, moved out to Colorado, like I said, 4 years ago, and just kind of blossomed from there. Pretty much probably hunt around 60 days a year out here. Try to get out as much as possible. I think we'll probably dive into the tactics and areas where we hunt a little more, but definitely a variety out here between public, clubs, guided, little variety for everybody.
How did you get into, like when you first moved to the state, how did you get into waterfowl hunting? Was it some buddies got you into it? Was it, just going out to public land until you found your spots?
Yeah, so I didn't know anybody when I moved to Colorado. I had one buddy. We pretty much just big game hunted together. And like I said, loved waterfowl hunting ever since moved out here from PA. And started trying to hunt public. Bought a license, bought a stamp, got legal, and started heading out to some public spots and learned very quick that it is a crowded state for
Yeah,
public lands.
how did you two link up, Jordan? Because you moved out there what 4 years ago or so.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you guys meet each other? You weren't necessarily, neither one of you moved out there just to waterfowl hunt or anything, right? You were just moving out there to move out there. I mean, what brought you to the state and kind of got you guys going out there?
I can say what brought me here was basically work. I was traveling, building wind turbines, worked on the road in the middle of nowhere, and my wife, now wife, was getting ready to move out here, and so we kind of landed on Denver. But the funny story is, I met Jordan through Instagram. Actually, I think I was posting a bunch of pictures of turkeys and such, and of course, Jordan swept right into my DMs, and it blossomed from there. As he,
Hey, that's typical.
Say.
You know, he likes to slide into guys.
Chad is a pretty good photographer, which if you follow our page, you know that we dabble in it. We all enjoy photography. So moving to the state, just trying to find people with similar interests. Same thing when I moved out there. Didn't know anybody. So, and when you're in a city,
you slid into Chad's DMs. Is that what happened?
I did.
Got lonely one night.
I did. I was like, this guy looks like he knows how to run a camera. And he hunts a lot. So kind of whipped from there.
Yeah. So the first,
I mean, it paid off because we killed a lot of geese out in the state that I would not have. I mean, I would not have killed a turkey out there if it wasn't for Chad. I probably wouldn't have killed any geese out there if it wasn't for Chad. So
yeah, first time I met Jordan, I was scouting for turkeys, roosting them the night before season. I told him where I was going to be, and if he wanted to show up, go ahead and show up. And here he comes rolling up and put some turkeys to bed and shot a double in 10 inches of snow the next morning. So
that's right.
That video, is that on our channel?
That video is not on our channel.
Forgot to turn the camera on again.
Basically.
At least I loaded my gun on that one.
Yeah.
Well, stuff happens out there. So
yeah,
when was the first time you guys went together though, waterfowl hunting?
So
where?
So going back to public land, so I had hunted public land for I think about 2 months out here. This was probably been the 2020 season. So started hunting public land, hunted like October, November, and I was like, this is rough. I mean, guys showing up at 4 a.m. to parking lots, can't get even a parking spot. I mean, guys setting up 50 yards from you. And so I somehow found a club out here, and that's what I'm a member of now. It's called Raining Skies Waterfowl, based on the Front Range of Colorado and through the Eastern Plains. And I think I had joined that first year, and then Jordan, we would have went turkey hunting for the first time that following spring, and then I talked him into to join the club that following year. So
yeah, and one of the cool things I'd say about that club is it's a very kind of DIY situation, which I really appreciate about it. It is, how many pits do they have now?
now they probably have roughly 60 to 70 pits, I would say, ranging from, if anybody's familiar with Colorado, I-25 corridor out through 76 into the Eastern Plains, the whole way to basically Nebraska. So yeah, like Jordan said, very DIY. They basically give you the property to utilize, and you do everything else from there, scouting, decoys.
Almost like a hunting lease.
It's essentially a lease with the availability. They get so many people to go in on this lease that instead of you getting one property to hunt the whole year, it is a network of, like Chad said, 80 to 100 properties that range pretty much from the Front Range, so the middle of Colorado, from the Rocky Mountains all the way across the state. So you're talking, a lot of these properties are 2-3 hour drives from one another, some of them even further. But it's essentially just literally a hole in the ground in a field. So the members of the club, they go out and dig all the pits out early in the year. And then there's essentially a draw system like many people would be familiar with on public land, where you go in on a certain day and you put in. And it's just first come, first serve. So the first person's, we say, hey, we're going to hunt pit 25 today. And then it's you and your buddies go hunt pit 25. You got to show up, go through the gate. You're setting all your decoys. You're, brushing the blinds. A lot of times you're shoveling snow out of the pit. So it's a little different than some of the clubs back east. Some of the clubs, the Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, like the clubs I was used to growing up with. Those were clubs you showed up to in the morning. Someone was setting out all your decoys, or your decoys are left out all year, and you just show up, you hunt from a big blind. This was definitely more of a DIY situation, which I really appreciated. I like to feel at least like we're working and earning the birds a little bit. So, and I think there's a lot.
Like, what about cost on what you guys are in the Raining Skies Club? What's the cost like compared to Arkansas? Like you said, like taking a week-long trip. Is it cheaper to be in that club, or what, if you don't mind, what's the price range for something like that if somebody wants to get into one?
So I can tell you the lease I've had a lease in Arkansas before with some of my buddies. And for one field, like an 80-acre field, was anywhere between usually $6,000 and $10,000. You get the field for the whole year. But when you got 4 guys at $10,000, you're talking a lot of money. And those aren't necessarily the best properties you can find in the state. That's, knocking on doors.
Are we talking snow geese in Arkansas? Is that
we're talking
what
ducks.
You're after? Ducks?
Yeah. I mean, you're hunting mostly, you're hunting meat ducks, and then you're hunting some specks, and then you can snow goose hunt. You'll find that a lot of people who duck hunt down there, they don't spend much time chasing snow geese. But yeah, I mean, the price in Colorado is significantly less, I found. And you get to hunt more days. Colorado, the season is significantly longer than Missouri, Arkansas, and Illinois is.
Yeah. How would you say the weather compares?
Well, it depends on, if you're a duck, the weather's great because you got snow.
Yeah, I'm talking as a hunter though. I picture Colorado hunting that time of the year just absolutely miserable cold, which I have no experience with it, but I picture Arkansas. I know there's cold temperatures there too, but I picture Denver being freezing.
Yeah.
Miserable to hunt. Like
today, it was 52 degrees and sunny, and that's pretty much been the story of our season this far. Yeah. Definitely been a different year, not typical for Colorado. I mean, last year we were looking at pictures just from a year ago, and there was, 8 inches of snow on the ground. It was -2 in the morning, and we went hunting on Monday. It got up to 55 degrees, sunny all day, no wind. And so it's been a little brutal season, but yeah, I would definitely say the weather in Colorado is typically, on a good year, much colder than Arkansas.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So back to your question, like price wise, you're paying significantly less, I have found in my experience, hunting in Colorado, which I really enjoyed. The price that I paid to hunt, from basically the middle of October to the middle of February, was the same price you can pay right now to hunt 3 days in Arkansas. So if you were to go in Arkansas and pay per day or pay for a weekend, you will pay the same amount for 3 days in Arkansas as you could for an entire club in Colorado. And my experience is right now, at least, in the last years, we've killed a lot more birds in Colorado than I ever did in Arkansas.
Yeah, I don't waterfowl hunt at all, but I was talking to Alan, who, Alan, but Chad probably doesn't. He was on the first episode with us, and he spends a lot of time in Arkansas, and he was showing me pictures of the guy that he works with down there has a picture of a giant whitetail back home. And the guy, I guess the duck hunting and stuff's so bad down there right now, he's actually leaving and coming back home to hunt a whitetail, which I think that says a lot because we're like winding down the season here.
Yeah.
It's a giant whitetail.
The club down in Arkansas, they've killed 7 ducks. Caleb and Tyler, Clint, they've killed 7 ducks this year. And they've been down there since Monday of this week. and that's 7 is their season total. So you're talking a handful of ducks for
That's about my duck
almost
hunting
half the season
experience.
of hunting. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just put it in perspective. I mean, this season we're at about 300 birds just for the little group that I hunt with, not including the entire club. I mean, the entire club's probably. I mean, I couldn't even put a number. Easily a couple thousand, 10,000 birds probably.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been a hard year, but I mean, we still are seeing some success.
What do you think, Chad? Your experience hunting in PA, we have a lot of experience, Arkansas, Missouri. What do you think are the differences between hunting Colorado? So if someone who comes from the Midwest or comes from Pennsylvania, they're going to load up their trailer and head out to Colorado and try to hunt, whether that's guided or, public or whatever they're going to do. What do you think the biggest difference is hunting, a Western state as compared to a Midwestern or an Eastern state?
So biggest difference from I don't know if it's the same in Illinois, but I mean, permission was definitely the biggest difference. Species, obviously, too. But where I'm from, Western Pennsylvania, I mean, you're pretty much always hunting an X. I mean, you basically find a field, driving around. I mean, there might only be 200-300 birds in there. I mean, they're going to be big Canadian geese, honkers. But you go on any farmer's door and a lot of the locals, and they're like, yeah, go for it. I mean, they don't care at all. When I first moved out here, I after public was so bad, I started door knocking here and there. I mean, just found some insane feeds, ducks on the rivers, and every person was like, yeah, it's already leased, or my grandson hunts, or we don't let hunting, or every excuse in the book. But I mean, I knocked on a lot of doors and never got a single yes without money being in the question. And then species, obviously, too. Obviously, ducks are going to be both places. We get a lot more wood ducks back in Pennsylvania. Somebody shoots a wood duck out here in Colorado, and it's pretty much going on the wall. I get very excited. We shoot a lot more black ducks. I don't know if I've ever seen somebody shoot a black duck out here, but a lot more black ducks back in Pennsylvania.
Easy now. Easy.
Yeah. And so, and then you also get a little more variety. I mean, a lot more widgeon out here. So you shoot some pin down both places, guide walls in both places. But species, you don't get really any snow geese. I didn't shoot my first snow goose till I moved out to Colorado. So that's definitely a big difference when you're watching 20,000 snow geese get off a roost. And back in Pennsylvania, we saw a snow goose. It was like, holy crap, we need to shoot that thing. And never seemed to happen. But
yeah, I can relate to the permission piece. I think the way kind of deer hunting is in the Midwest, where you can't really get on anywhere because everyone has somewhere leased for deer. That's kind of how it seems in Eastern Colorado as well, where these clubs like the one we were in, and there's a lot of other clubs in Colorado, they really kind of scoop up the ground pretty quick, to where it just like you knock on doors, you can't get permission. And it's like that for everything. But I have also noticed that way more so than it is back east. Getting permission on property in Colorado is pretty much a fool's errand. You cannot get permission anywhere. And like you said, it's outfitted or it's leased.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
So what are your
We've been saving that.
So yeah, I think another, like you said, the species, the biggest thing that was a difference for me was coming from Illinois. We kill a lot of big Canadian geese. And then going out to Colorado, the cacklers and the lessers. I was not used to seeing like flocks that big of, dark geese. And I think that was my favorite experience hunting Colorado, was hunting the dark geese. I grew up a goose hunter. I didn't do a lot of duck hunting. But being able to hunt flocks that I had only seen, big white geese, snow geese fly in, to be able to hunt Canadian geese the same way I grew up hunting snow geese in Arkansas was just a really cool experience. And I think that's probably what, would be the draw to Colorado, would be to go out and hunt, huge flocks of geese in a dry field. Because that's just something that we don't get in Missouri or Arkansas. Usually you're hunting flooded timber or you're hunting a flooded field. We have so much water that even sitting a dry field, you just don't do very often unless it is already has geese in it. So to be able to go to Colorado and just, you're sitting in a dry field and you're looking around thinking, well, why would a goose land here? And then, they're tornadoing in on you an hour into the day, I thought was, probably the coolest experience in Colorado. And there's so many birds out there, like in comparison to even Missouri, Illinois, and Arkansas. Like there's so many more Canadian geese that even if you're not on the X, you can still have a really great day. Even some of the average to bad days are better than the good days we have here in the Midwest.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, like I said, you find a field back east and, it's 200 to 300 birds is a big feed for geese. And out here you see 200 to 300 birds, you might not even notice them. And you'll find feeds of lessers. I mean, you'll see feeds of 5,000 and it's just like, holy cow. And pretty cool experience.
So if you were coming out here to goose hunt for the first time, say you're going to try, you're going to hunt dark geese on public, what would you put, like how many decoys would you put in your trailer? Like what would your kind of, pack look like per se? Like if you're loading the trailer up, you want to hunt, what are like the must haves to come out here and try goose hunting for the first time in Colorado?
Yeah. So first thing is I wouldn't expect to come out here and without either a guide or having a lease and hunting much of a dry field. The river system for public is exceptional out here. Ducks, I would say, would be the big attractant, but public for dry fields, I will say I wouldn't expect much of that. Just for anybody listening to this, not to get your hopes up, but can be difficult. But decoy tactics is like I said, a lot different than out east. I think back in college when I first started hunting, I bought a dozen, Avian X honkers, and a couple $100 back then. Pretty much burned my entire savings, and we used to go out and kill limits over a dozen decoys. Just hunting the X. Basically, you're just using them to guide them into where you want them. We're out here. I mean, we'll run anywhere from 20 to 50 dozen just for lessers, dark geese on a daily basis. The club owner has 50 dozen full body lessers that he runs, plus another 20 dozen shells on snow days. So it just really depends. Silhouettes can definitely help with that. I think anybody that does waterfowl hunting knows that full bodies aren't that cheap. So lessers and silhouettes and socks kind of help break that bridge and kind of get you into the game out here. But these geese are hunted a lot. So, sometimes it takes a big spread. Sometimes it takes, a little spread if you're on an X. Just really, really depends. One of the guides posted the other day, they were hunting, there was 4 spread setups within a mile of them. So, these are highly pressured geese. And a year like this, I'm pretty sure a lot of these geese have been here since Thanksgiving, if not earlier. That's really the last weather that we've had that pushed anything in or out. So, these are, they're sitting on the same reservoir out here. They're coming off flying over the same field, and they can get very, very stale very quick.
So if you were going to come out to duck hunt public, what would be your strategy for that?
Duck hunting, you can find a good X for duck hunting for sure. There's tons of public along the South Platte River. There's different ponds and such that you can draw as well. A lot of them start freezing up in the winter, but the Platte definitely stays open. Um, I mean, we'll typically run 5 dozen duck silhouettes, or 2 to 3 dozen duck full bodies. A lot of sandbars out here, so there's a lot of places you can put goose shells, to give track ducks, um, duck full bodies, and then 2 to 3 dozen floaters will do you good. And then sometimes mojos work, sometimes they don't. It just kind of depends on the season and how it's going and how stale the birds are.
What do you think? Because when I think of public hunting out here on the river, Missouri, Arkansas, you're thinking the big rivers. You're thinking Missouri and Illinois. We used to hunt the Ohio, or we were hunting these, big river systems where we had to have a pretty sizable John boat or a mud motor. So that was kind of kind of a barrier to entry for a lot of duck hunters is, hey, I don't have a boat. So you had to know someone with a boat. I think hunting in Colorado for me, one of the cool things was a lot of the rivers that we were hunting never really got definitely not deeper than your waders. A lot of them didn't get over my knee boots. And like you said, there's a lot of sandbars, and these aren't, huge river systems. Most of them that I hunted, we were able to walk into. You were able to park and walk into the river. Um, I thought that was a really cool, way for someone who, maybe only has a couple dozen decoys. You can come out to Colorado and hunt the South Platte River, maybe without, needing a boat or, needing a whole bunch of gear, waders and a couple dozen decoys. You could throw them out in the Platte, and have a really good day, if you're in a good enough spot.
Yeah, that's definitely true. You see the South Platte River, but back in PA, that's a creek or a creek, right?
Yeah.
I love when people say crick.
It's pretty much like your your trout fishing back east or something like that. Yeah, it's not a very big river. Definitely, pretty much all the sections are wadable. Colorado definitely probably gets a little bigger than the Platte, but the Platte definitely wadable. Current's usually not too bad. You can usually find some decent pulls. There are some areas where you might need a little heavier weight on your decoys, but for the most part, I mean, especially if you're moving around, you can usually find those slow pockets of water. There's a lot of sloughs, warm water sloughs that move through the river as well. I mean, there's sections where I've seen it, -5 degrees for a high for 5 days straight, and they're still wide open. So that's a pretty cool part of it. Kind of those warm water sloughs that, they're only 15, 20 feet wide, and you can just get piles of mallards dumping in late season in January, and makes for a fun day for sure.
And are those sloughs, because I always wondered this, and maybe are those spring fed? Is that why is that why the temperature of them are the way they are? Because I know me and you hunted one time, like you said, where it was, I mean, it had been below negative temperatures for weeks. And we went into this little pocket of water that, was still open. And like Chad said, the ducks were just piling in on it. And if I remember right, I believe the neighboring property was public. Like, I think there was a walk-in really close to where we were. And I thought that was really interesting that we were killing so many ducks, and then just right down the river, you could hear the gunshots of the public guys killing ducks as well on a walk-in spot.
Yeah, I think some are spring feds. A lot of them, I would say, just kind of break off from the main river. I don't really know why they don't freeze. I don't know if it's kind of the ground conditions or whatever it may be, but yeah, they call them warm water sloughs. Must be Ducks Unlimited heating them up or something like that. But
Speaking of water out in Colorado, we talk about the South Platte, some of these warm water sloughs. I think one of the challenges would be if you were coming from a different state, and you were trying to, duck hunt Colorado, or maybe you just moved to Colorado and you're wanting to hunt public. Finding water, I think, can be really challenging. There's not a whole lot of water in Colorado to begin with, and it seems like a lot of the water gets dammed up by farmers to kind of preserve the resources. And and stuff like that. So, if you want to talk a little bit about kind of the challenge of finding water during the season to duck hunt on, especially on public lands.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much after irrigation stops, I mean, the river South Platte tends to fill back up. I haven't, early season it can get pretty low as it goes out east farther. But it's, if you're hunting the river, it's usually fairly easy. And then, CPW does a pretty good job of a few of the state wildlife areas out here have some ponds located on them that are, managed and filled with water. A lot of those are going to require a reservation. So make sure you check into that. They can either be an online reservation or kind of a walk-in reservation where you put your name on a little sheet and then you go out and hunt for the day. So like, I mean, Onyx is obviously a big help. I've actually been using that a lot lately to check water levels with the new recent imagery that they have. It might be a couple weeks behind, but when some of these spots are an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes away, it's pretty hard to scout them. So those come in handy. But like you said, water is definitely a big thing in Colorado. It's very expensive to lease water. So going back to being part of a club, with multiple members, it definitely helps to break that up and get some really good properties that you're able to hunt. We had some big floods this year, and what was that, like April, May? We had a ton of rain. I mean, just inches and upon inches. And actually, one of our best spots from last year, basically all filled in with I think it was that one spot you were talking about, but filled in with sand this year from all the floods, and there's barely any water in there just because everything's so flat now. There's really no channel for the slough to run, and it's been a pretty depressing spot this year to say the least. But water can be your enemy and your friend as well.
If you were, because the South Platte, if you're not like familiar with the state, the way it runs, if you were going to come out and hunt public, would you recommend hunting closer to Denver on the river? We know it kind of runs up towards Nebraska. Where have you found is kind of the better, just general areas closer to Denver, kind of the middle of the state, or kind of the far eastern end? Because I know that there's public kind of all along that river. There's different pockets you can get in and hunt on. What would be your recommendation for someone who's maybe on Onyx trying to look for a spot, just a general area to try?
Yeah. I would say the farther you can get away from the city, the better, just based off pressure. I mean, Platte's kind of broken into, say, kind of 3 or 4 sections. So it comes out of the mountains, some of the best trout fishing in the country. There's a lot of national forests there, areas that you can hunt until it, starts to freeze over and get pretty cold. Then it runs through the city. Obviously, you can't hunt the city. You'd be amazed at the pile of ducks and geese that sit on the Platte and
There are so many geese in Denver. Like, it's insane driving to work when I drove through Denver, how many geese and ducks are there. Like, they're on golf courses. They're, like you said, like, you go to Coors Field during a baseball game in the summer, and we used to walk across the river and you look down and it's just full of mallards, like middle of the summer. And I do think that helps. It's got to help the duck and goose hunting a little bit. I mean, Denver is essentially just a huge refuge, it seems like, for a lot of those local birds, because they're just always there on those golf courses. And they're on the golf courses, they're on the park. I mean, you go to a brewery in town and there's just always geese. If there's grass, there's geese.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, I'm sure some of those geese and ducks sit there all season long and don't go anywhere, but it is kind of like a huge refuge where, I mean, they're not getting pressured. They're getting fed. They're getting ready to head back north for breeding season. When springtime rolls around. So that's a great point. But
did you guys ever search for anywhere within the city limits, or is it just I can only imagine the.
So we never hunted city limits. We have a video on our YouTube titled "Denver City Limits Goose Hunting," where we are just outside of the city. If you're familiar with Denver, the airport is not in the city, but it's the Denver airport, but it's outside of the city. But even that area is just, I mean, it's
Is it
full of
something
geese that are getting off.
similar to the picture behind you on the wall with the mule deer? Can you see the?
Yeah, I mean,
skyline?
pretty similar to that. Like you're close enough to Denver that you are, on the outside. And there are a lot of people who hunt just right outside of Denver on the eastern side. Me and Chad hunted several spots that are, really close to the city. You can't hunt in the city, within city limits, but you can get right on the edge of it and kind of pluck off a lot of those local birds. There's a lot of reservoirs that kind of surround the city of Denver. Since water is such a precious resource out there, they have these huge reservoirs that they dam up, and those birds sit on them. So I lived out kind of near the Aurora Reservoir. And there was a lot of good goose hunting out there, just right outside of the city.
Did you have any crazy experiences with any anti-hunters just outside of the city? Because I can't imagine what it's like just outside of Denver or inside Denver with, extreme left-wing people that absolutely hate hunters. Did you ever have anything that you could recall of people just targeting you or nothing?
Not waterfowl hunting. I think so. What you find in Colorado is all of your kind of recreational people, the people who are hiking and biking and kayak, doing all those things. That time of year, they're not going east of Denver. They're going west. They're going to the ski slopes. They're going to the mountains. And just in general, like if you're west of Denver up in the mountains where, big game hunting is kind of king, the elk, the deer, trout fishing, that's kind of where you run into a lot of those issues.
Yes.
We kind of we've had people, I don't know if you were with me, Chad, but we were turkey hunting near Boulder. I've had people yell at me getting out of the truck because, you're getting a gun out. You're on the national forest. And I had a lady say, well, you can't hunt here. You're on the national forest. And I was like, well, yeah, that's actually why I'm here. But out east, it's all farmland. It's all crops. You don't run into a whole lot of Denver, Denverites out there.
Yeah, there you go.
You don't run into a lot of them out there on the eastern plains because out there it's just flat. It's cattle. It's
they're not out there hiking and walking the dog and smoking weed.
It's much more hunter friendly out east where it's farmers and leases. So yeah, waterfowl hunting didn't really run into it much. It's also so cold and windy that a lot of people, they're not getting out of their house at that time anyway. The weather, like Chad said, usually is pretty gnarly and just downright miserable. So us being out there at 3 a.m. setting decoys, we don't really stir much attention. And when people drive by, I like to think our decoy spreads look so good. They probably just think they're birds sitting out in the field.
They probably do, honestly.
Until I see a few drop from the sky.
Yeah. All right, where are we transitioning to now? Stories?
Yeah. Stories.
You guys have any good stories to share for us non-waterfowl hunters?
Oh, I mean, we could talk about the amount of times Jordan showed up late to the gas station or slept in long. But
does he ever show up without any camera gear or without a headlamp by chance?
I think
never have a headlamp.
Oh, I don't know. I think he forgot batteries a few times. He had to steal a couple of my batteries when we were turkey hunting before.
Don't get hunters started. Every battery I have is hunters.
Yeah. He looks at the back of him and he's like, what is this number on the back of him? Because I numbered them at one point because I like to stay organized with it and know which batteries I'm charging and stuff. And then I catch him in Colorado. Like, I got this junky battery that was made in China or something. And I'm like, where in the world did this come from? And I look over there and he's popping one out of his camera and it's got the number on the back. I'm like, he stole my battery and he still has it from 3 years ago. So we get into quite a few heated moments with batteries and headlamps and stuff like that. So,
Yeah,
you guys ever get into it? Not like us.
I
No,
just
not like
rolled with
not
the
like
flow.
yeah, not like me and Hunter do. Hunter gets too agitated. So he's way more. He gets it. You know, he
Yeah.
gets it. Like
He
sometimes
just
you're
hasn't
late.
he hasn't been around you probably long enough to.
Sometimes
You
you're late
guys
at
ever
the gas station.
you ever spend a week together in the wilderness?
We spent 4 days together in a van.
Yeah, we did.
Ooh.
That was pretty tight quarters.
We did.
Isn't that picture on our Instagram?
It is. Yeah.
Tell us
Nebraska.
a little bit. Tell us about that van. Do you own that van?
Yeah, so I built that van. Took me about 6 months to get it together. Just a ProMaster and built it out. Got electric in there and stove and pretty good little hunting rig. Take it out.
Is that what it's built for? Is just to hunt out of, or do you vacation out of it, work out of it?
Yeah, we go camping quite a bit. I mean, summertime, fishing, trout fishing. Pretty nice. Just pull up to the stream and
Rodeo.
weekend. What was that?
Rodeos.
Yeah, we've driven it back to PA a few times too, and like we were talking about, we took it to Nebraska. 3 of us slept in there, and did a little turkey tour through Nebraska. But
I will say, someone who has stayed in the van, for one, very comfortable van. I hunted Nebraska one time and I stayed in a motel, and we hunted Nebraska and we stayed in the van, and I think the van was probably a better setup than even the motel was. So to be able just to, I can't show up late if I'm already in the van. Chad could I'm pretty sure I slept half the way to the first turkey spot because Chad was already driving while I was trying to wake up. So that's very convenient for us who like to sleep in.
Yeah, I know how you like to sleep in. He'd be the last one up every morning in elk camp. They'd be beeping their heads off, and he's still in there.
Last one up, last one out of the tent. I'd be the first one up the mountain.
Yeah, because you forgot half your shit at camp.
Then we'd get to the spot, and you'd be the first one to sleep again.
Yeah. You guys keep your eyes open up there. Oh, good times. So you guys need to take that van on tour, I think. You need to go on the turkey tour, whitetail tour, something like that.
I think it sounds like we're going to go back to Nebraska.
Yeah, I'm trying to talk Jordan into getting back out here.
Chad, you're from Pennsylvania, so what's the whitetail hunting like over there? Because I get comments and stuff all the time on our channel of Pennsylvania people just absolutely eating the hunting stuff up, or orders online of whitetail hats or something like that. So what's it like back home?
I mean, whitetail's, a huge culture back in PA. I mean, first day of deer season was almost like going to church, right? I mean, we also have a 2-week-long rifle season, which doesn't help much for the growth of deer back there, but there's a ton of hunters in the woods. I mean, deer camps are very common. You head to the mountains for a weekend. I think I shot my first deer with a bow when I was 11 years old. The first deer I ever hit was probably 140-inch 9-point that my dad was trying to call me off of because he wanted to shoot it, and may or may not have made a bad shot on that one. But the next day I shot a little button buck and it ran 15 yards, and that was my first deer to 11 years old, and kind of grew since then. I mean, still definitely have a passion for archery, hunting, whitetail. I just got married in the second weekend of October.
Oh no!
A lot of mad people at me, but it was great for me because I ended up hunting 3 days before my wedding, and had some time to sneak in the stand there and get out. So that worked.
Yeah, well, I can relate to that.
You both got married in the middle of hunting season.
Yeah, my wife now, she kind of got set on September for some reason, which I understand. It's pretty good weather, but like September is elk hunting season, and so we went with early September. But I wouldn't let her have the last week because that's kind of the week we like to set on now. But yeah, I missed out on that first experience.
You both missed an elk hunt. due to your wedding, if I do remember correctly.
We
with
did.
Chad, but I think Chad, you ended up going back with the rifle and got a cow, right?
Didn't get a cow. Ian ended up getting a cow.
Ian got a cow. That's right. Somebody got a cow.
Yeah, on our hunt, Austin ended up shooting a pretty nice mule deer buck that turned into a pretty hellacious pack
That is
out.
right.
And,
Yes,
you know,
somebody
put
got something.
it-
That's
Jordan, I will say that I applaud you for having a springtime wedding. It's the smartest thing you could have ever have done.
it's not even during turkey season. I made
I
sure
know
turkey
it's
season was out.
great.
It is.
I can take a day or two off of fishing. It doesn't bother me.
There's nothing going on. Chad, if you come to the wedding, I think if you come a few days early, you can catch 5th season turkey season. Here in Illinois, we have 5 seasons. We'll put you on a spot.
You have to show me the application process there.
I think the wedding venue is on 100 acres, and it looks like turkey habitat. So that might be what I do the morning of.
You should have tried to package that in with the deal because I'm sure it wasn't cheap.
It was not cheap.
So just the
How
day
will they
of,
know?
even.
How will they know if I'm down there?
Yeah, take your bow out and be good to go.
Yeah, McKenna will be. She'll know, although
She
she's
will
not
know.
supposed to see you that day.
Yeah,
So
Exactly.
That's perfect.
it is perfect. Let's do it. All video. All right.
How's
We
your?
going to Wolves? Are we going to Wolves in Colorado? Or you got something to say, Chad?
I was just gonna ask Jordan how his waterfowl season's been going since he
Yeah, go ahead and stay on that.
left me out here in Colorado.
So I have not duck hunted or goose hunted one time since I moved back. I have plans to go to Arkansas, hopefully this weekend or the next. But the guys have been down there for 3 days now, and they have not killed anything. So they killed, I think they said this weekend or this week, I think they've killed like 1 speck, 7 ducks for the whole year, and then like a handful of specks. So it's been pretty rough. There is a bunch of geese all over my house. I live on the Illinois side of the Mississippi River. I live right off the river north of St. Louis, and there's Canada geese all over my house. All these fields around my house are full of Canada geese. I have nobody up here that I know who hunts. I don't know any landowners, but I'm starting to get a little itchy to start knocking on doors and seeing if I can't find someone who'll let me throw some decoys out in their field. But so far, nothing. I haven't really. Chad, like you said, it's hard for me to get out of bed to kill, 40 to kill a limit. And in Colorado, we were killing 40. We were killing 40 geese a day, and then sometimes we were killing snow geese on top of that. So 40 Canada geese, handful of snow geese. Maybe you knock out a duck or two, but you're talking. I mean, even our bad days. I think the worst day that I can remember going, we killed maybe 11 or 12, and those were the bad days. I mean, the good days you're killing 40 by 10 a.m. The limit in Colorado is 5 geese a person, so that is more than double what you can kill in Illinois. Illinois, the limit's 2. So you can literally go out and kill more geese in a weekend in Colorado than you can in a whole season back east. You're hunting Missouri or Illinois. Chad, you've probably already killed more geese than all of my buddies out here have combined. And I know I told you.
I think you could kill more deer in Illinois than you could waterfowl at times. But that's just, I don't have any good spots, but I see a deer at least every time I go.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. You could sit in a tree stand and see more deer than you will see ducks if you're sitting, even if you're on a river.
What happened, though? Did we not used to be a hot spot? I don't know much about it. But
Southern Illinois used to. There's an article in the Southern Illinoisan they did like in the 90s. It was titled like the goose capital of the world, because at that time the Crab Orchard National Wildlife Refuge had more geese on it than any other refuge in the United States. So we were literally like crowned, self-proclaimed goose capital of the world. And if you drive around Southern Illinois, there's still kind of the remnants of that. The Marion, when you go under the underpass, there's geese painted on it. The Crab Orchard Refuge, the logo is a goose. So there's still a lot of that here today. The refuges, the old hunting clubs that are kind of now shutting down. Um, that used to kind of be a big deal. And back in the 90s, a, you know, that's when kind of Tim Grounds hit his stride and, world champion goose caller. A lot of the goose calls today, like the biggest brands today, came from, Tim Grounds and kind of that circle of guys. Molt Gear, Scott Thienen, he was a Tim Grounds goose caller. Kelly Powers, I believe. I don't want to say the wrong names. I thought Fred Zink was in there too, but maybe not. But a lot of kind of the grandfather of goose hunting was from Johnson City. The number one goose refuge in the country was in Southern Illinois. So Southern Illinois was a hot spot. Talking to my dad and his buddies, they talk about, my grandma's old property. They would sit on the pit and they would kill their limit every day. The neighboring property used to be a hunting club. It's no longer, but my dad used to talk about how when the limit was 2, there'd be a waiting list. So the first guys would come in, 4 of them would kill their limit, and then there would be 4 more in the clubhouse waiting, and then they would go out and kill their limit, and then they would rotate 4 more guys in and they would kill their limit. And it was just a constant. It was a way for the club to make more money.
So what do you think's changed, in the last, what'd you say, 20 years or so? 15, 20 years. I mean,
so
what's changed? Is it the climate?
I mean, reading like the articles, like Ducks Unlimited puts out a lot of good information on this. Delta Waterfowl puts out a lot of studies on it. I think one thing they point to a lot is kind of the power plants that they have now, the heated lakes. Birds want open water, especially big Canadian geese. They roost on open water. So what you found back then is there weren't as many of these open water, lakes. The lakes would freeze up. The geese would have to come south. So climate plays a role in that. You go outside right now, nothing's frozen. I mean, all the water around Southern Illinois, even all the way up to Northern Illinois, I mean, the water's wide open. So these birds have no reason to leave, where they're roosted. And even when it does get cold enough, there's still open water. Minnesota kills more geese than any other state in the country. And it wasn't always that way. Minnesota is home to these huge power plants. Those power plants have open water. So these geese are coming down from Canada. They're migrating. They're finding these areas that's perfect habitat for geese. It's these huge open water lakes where you can't hunt. They're private, power plants. They're these private, lakes. The geese don't leave. It doesn't get cold enough. And even when it does get cold, like there's enough food available to them because the winters just don't get as harsh that they just don't come.
Yeah, they're almost not making it. Yeah, they're not making it down to us because you've got open water above us. So why would they even make the trek any further? I think Minnesota has the most water of any state around, doesn't it? Any state in the country?
I believe so. You look at like the Dakotas and some of these other states where, if you kind of follow the historical like freeze lines, and you can find a lot of that research, you'll see that kind of where that freeze line was back in the 90s hovers right over, the Boot Hill of Missouri, Southern Illinois, Arkansas. Arkansas was huge because it was the same thing. There was so much water in Arkansas, and there still is. If you go down to Arkansas, everything is flooded. I mean, you are in the Delta. You are in, the lowlands of the Mississippi River. It's flooding. The rice fields are there. There is just so much water. The issue now is it's still perfect habitat, but the ducks don't have to come that far south, so they just don't. When you look at the freeze lines historically, you see that it's creeping up every year. It's getting higher and higher. And those ducks and geese, they stay right on those fronts. So like Chad was saying, the weather in Colorado, it's mild right now. So those birds haven't made their way. But you can hunt on days with a strong north wind, and you will see the birds. Like, what days the birds are going to migrate because you can watch the fronts coming down, and those north winds, those birds just ride it, and we just don't get that as much anymore. And when we do, it comes in later. So
it's I know hunting,
hunting in Illinois, I mean, your best time to hunt is the last week of the year because that's when the weather is the best for hunting. So Southern Illinois has a historic goose hunting past, but anymore it's not the place it used to be. So you got to go north. You got to go to the Dakotas. You got to go to Minnesota. And I think that's what makes Colorado a really interesting destination. Is a lot of people from Missouri, Arkansas. They're a lot closer to the eastern side of Colorado than they are the Dakotas, than they are Minnesota. And there's an opportunity to kill a lot of birds in Colorado, whether you hunt public, whether you hunt private. I had never heard of, when I moved to Colorado, I thought my waterfowl hunting was over. I thought, hey, we're going to big game hunt. Like, duck hunting, goose hunting wasn't that great in Arkansas and Missouri anymore anyway. We weren't, we were basically doing it because you were hanging out with your buddies. It wasn't because you were killing birds. Where you moved to Colorado, link up with Chad, and we start going, and it was like, oh, wait a minute, like this is serious business out here. Like we're not just drinking beer and sitting in a blind like we were in Colorado or Arkansas, or sitting up against a tree, messing with your buddies. Like you're out there, there's birds, you got to hunt them hard. But it kind of got me back into waterfowl hunting that I had kind of lost because of how bad the waterfowl hunting had gotten. You go out there and see those numbers of birds. You're hunting those rivers, and you're seeing that many ducks and that many geese, and having the opportunity to hunt them that way was really exciting. And that's something the guys from that I hunt in Arkansas with, they were talking about. We should plan a trip, and go to the Dakotas, or we should go to Canada and duck hunt. And we could do this. And it was like, yeah, we could. It was like, we could also, get a field out in Colorado, or, go on a hunt out in Colorado, and we can kill a lot of geese out there too. And, not have to take 2 weeks off from work to do it. So.
Yeah, I could see that. I could also see, like, whenever you moved out west, I never thought of waterfowl hunting out there, but that's, I don't know. I didn't know that people back east whitetail hunted so much either. So, I mean, it's kind of mind blowing both directions, but you get older and you learn a little bit
big
more.
World out there.
Yes, sure is. Nico, did you ever think people from Pennsylvania whitetail hunted? Ever crossed your mind? Probably never thought about it.
A couple years ago.
Yeah.
I think a fun fact is I think PA has the largest number of hunters in the country.
Yeah, like the density per acre. I think you're right on that. I've heard that before.
Yeah, that's why they call it the Orange Army.
Hey, we call it the Orange Army here too, so it must be a countrywide thing.
They come from Pennsylvania, the Orange Army.
That's true. I don't see too many guys from Pennsylvania here, but southern states more so. But where are we going now? Wolves in Colorado? Is that the last topic of discussion?
I don't know if we have time for wolves in Colorado. That'd take up we might have to do a whole podcast on wolves in Colorado.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess we can just kind of introduce it. If anybody hasn't heard, they've reintroduced 5 wolves now?
No, they're up to 10 now.
Are they up to 10? They just dumped a few more off.
Yeah,
and they're planning on 30 to 50 is what I had researched at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely a hot topic of discussion. It's all over the internet. I think you see it on every Facebook
a very
group.
Interesting article that like I said, we'll have to do a pod where we just talk about it, because I found so much kind of information out on it that there's no way you could get to all of it in a short amount of time. But
that's the thing is you see these headlines and you automatically want to jump to a conclusion where we really haven't. I personally haven't had enough time to sit down and study all of it, but I've seen arguments from both sides that are intriguing. But
yeah, I think we knew it was coming for a while. Like living in Colorado, I think it was a bigger story than it was, nationwide.
Yeah.
I think most of the country just found out about it probably right now because they just got released. But Colorado, I think the residents have kind of been prepping for it. The one interesting thing I found was that they did not tell. So there is like a livestock kind of council, kind of commission
The
I like to
buttons.
picture. I like to picture it, yeah, like Yellowstone, where there's
Mhm.
like this like livestock like sheriffs running around. But there really is like like a livestock commission or council for these like big areas, like these big county-wide
Yeah.
sections of Colorado. And CPW had talked to the landowners about making sure that they were ready for the wolves, and they were supposed to be working together of sorts. And during one of their like open hearings where they were with the council and with the state, was actually when the wolves were released. So they got all the livestock owners kind of in one spot, and then they went and released the wolves without telling them um, at the exact same time. And it was like a private release. So they had promised these landowners, these livestock, workers that, hey, like, don't worry, we're not going to release the wolves unless we'll tell you where and we'll tell you when. And then the governor kind of, you know,
Did his thing.
slighted everybody and invited a bunch of like donors and this and that and all of these,
His
pro-wolf
husband was there too, Jordan.
his husband was there.
Yeah.
Is that a
and they
serious
really-
thing?
Yes.
Yeah, no, he is. And his husband got in some trouble for
What are we talking about right now?
the governor of Colorado, Governor Polis. He has a husband, and his husband got in trouble because and this kind of ties back, when they released the wolves, they did not tell the livestock, the ranch owners, and they did it in a private place. So they did not tell them where they were releasing the wolves in fear of, for one, people knowing where the wolves were being released and going out and killing them. Because you're basically putting a giant X on a spot and saying, hey, the wolves are right here, which opens the door to people hunting them. But they didn't tell them the date. What happened was some of the people who were invited, however, the internet sleuths, they found the area that the wolves were released. And then there was an article that came out. I think it was like, I don't want to get the wrong newspaper, but a local like Western Front or Western Slope newspaper released an article basically publishing where the wolves were released and also publishing kind of the shady way they did it during the Livestock Commission Council. Didn't tell them, didn't make anyone aware that this was going on. The landowners were not aware. They were told they would be aware. And then when they're at this meeting, they said, hey, guess what? We just released these 10 wolves. And now they have everybody all together, so they can't like go do anything about it. They released this article, and the governor's husband saw the article, did not like what was written in it, and wrote some pretty nasty stuff about like the landowners, the ranch owners, like all of these people. Put out some pretty nasty words about landowners in Colorado, and
sounds really professional.
Yeah, being
all the way
anti,
around.
Just came after the
Yes.
the journalist and called the journalist, unprofessional, all of this.
So the journalist's names, Jordan, was Rachel Gable, and it was the fence post. So the big thing she was publishing on was CPW and the state were promising that none of these wolves would have a past of depredation. So obviously these ranchers are worried a lot about livestock and their cattle and sheep and whatnot. And she did some digging, and all these wolves came from Oregon. So if you guys don't know, Montana denied us.
Yeah, the neighboring states that have them already denied because they don't want any more trouble with them.
Yep, and Oregon ended up giving us these wolves, and it turns out through some research, she found out which packs these wolves came from, and every single one of them has a past of depredation, which they promised local ranchers and pretty much everybody. And it even went out in their release proposal that they would do their absolute best to ensure that these wolves did not have a past of depredation. And here we are. And so us as hunters, who knows what it's going to do to
does the past of depredation, you're talking about attacks.
Yeah, so it essentially means that these wolves came from a pack that were
aggressive.
Confirmed. The pack that they came from had confirmed like cattle kills.
kill the
Nice.
livestock.
So the reason Oregon wanted to get rid of these wolves in the first place was because they were wolves that were in a pack that had confirmed killed cattle and livestock. And in her article, in the research, they go into, they've done research on this type of packs and wolves, and that, if a pack of wolves has a history of hunting livestock, then like they're going to continue to do it. Where if you find wolves that, hunt, more native species, and don't target cattle and wolves, then they're much less likely to, attack livestock. It's just one of those things where, they promise, like Chad said, they promised the farmers that, hey, we're only going to put wolves in here that are coming from, these packs or these areas where, they're not going to prey on livestock because they don't do it anyway and they don't know what livestock is. And instead they went out and got wolves that, not only are around livestock, but have a history of, killing livestock. And then they took those wolves and then dumped them right into the heart of, Colorado.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely going to be an issue. It's going to increase, I believe, every year, the issue, because they multiply. They can have a minimum of 5 pups a year. Is that right? Something like that.
Something. I mean, they have no natural.
Whereas an elk,
no
elk's gonna have 2.
predators right now.
Yeah.
There's language in there that they may be able to be controlled in the future.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. So
Which
whatever
that
that means.
That is what, if you look into like the Minnesota packs and stuff, I believe that's the same thing that happened in those states. Is I don't know if it was Minnesota or Wisconsin, but there was one of those northern states. When they released the wolves, the agreement was when it reaches a certain threshold, then a hunting season would be opened. And that was kind of part of the agreement they had with the state, is the state would allow it as long as the hunting season would be open, once it hit, whatever that number was. And then what happened is once it hit the number, the anti-hunting, crowd came out and said, well, why are you hunting these wolves? We just got them. And now you're going to, gun them down. Put a lot of pressure on the governor. And they ended up, closing the hunting season. And then the population got out of control. So even when conservation, and the biologists are, have a plan ready, that doesn't mean that, they're going to be able to follow it, because the same thing in Colorado, having a huge, metro area, like Denver, that's the whole reason the wolves got released in the first place. So to think that those people are then going to turn around here in 5 years and say, okay, we'll vote that we can hunt the wolves,
I don't think so.
And the fact that it even went to a vote, because I believe in the early portions, Chad, you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe CPW or the the biologists recommended against it at the beginning. Like, I believe that they were not.
Yeah, I mean the CPW has never been on board. So basically, it is they made it a ballot initiative so that if you look at the map of who actually voted for this, it's your Boulder, your Denver. I think even Durango was part of it, and so it's your your major cities in Colorado where they're never even going to see these wolves. It doesn't affect them, until they start attacking
their dogs.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's it's you can't manage wildlife based off a vote from people that don't know what's going on. And I think that's what a lot of, and it passed by like point.
It barely passed, right?
Yeah, it was like 49 something to 51, or 49 point something to 50 point. And so I think, that's the big thing. CPW, like Jordan said, they recommended against it, and they went along with the vote, and that's where we're at right now.
So the rumor, or do you have the confirmed location? Was it northern part of the state where they had the big winter kill, or was it?
No, it's kind of central. I'm trying to think of the town.
Kind of right out 70. I believe it was near Kremlin, Colorado.
Yeah. So Not
I was
that
just
like
interested in the timing of releasing them in the location. I didn't know if it was up there around.
no, it was almost directly like almost if you took Colorado and you put a dot right in the middle of it, it was
Mhm.
essentially right there. I don't know what like how they determined where the
Yeah.
wolves would go. I think tourism probably had a little bit to do with it because you're right there in the Silverthorne Breckenridge area. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where all your ski resorts and all kind of your your people hang out. Usually your Denver crowd and your tourism dollars, they don't get much further west than that. Um, Silverthorne, Breckenridge, that's kind of where everyone goes, Aspen area. And then once you get past that, you get in Western Colorado, especially if you get past like Glenwood and you get off anywhere once you get a little far north of I-70 or south of I-70. Um, there's just not a lot of people there. So I think it was a little bit of optics like, hey, we're going to drop these wolves in the heart of ski country and you can come out and see them. The reality is,
Yeah, you're not going to see them for a while.
well, you're probably never going to see them, period. If you think about, there's mountain lions and bears all over Colorado, and I've never seen a
Right.
mountain lion. And I try to find bears, and the only time we ever see bears is when Chad's hunting without me. So
Yeah, it's never going to turn into necessarily like a Yellowstone situation where you're drawing in millions of dollars for people to see
no,
wolves.
the Yellowstone argument is one you'll see a lot. Like in the Facebook comments, you'll see, well, it worked in Yellowstone. We released them in Yellowstone. And, the big thing there is that is I mean, Yellowstone is essentially if you were to block off an area and you said, all right, no people are allowed in it. I mean, there's parts of the park, obviously, where people can go, but I mean, Yellowstone doesn't have elk hunters. There's not deer hunters in
Right.
Yellowstone. I mean, Yellowstone is.
It's a different ecosystem in itself just because you
Yeah.
don't have the hunters.
Yeah, I mean, the wolves are acting as what Colorado has in the hunter. So where Colorado, Chad's picking off an elk every year, we're shooting an elk every year. They don't have that in the park. So you're now adding. You have more and more hunters every year. Now you're going to have these wolves. It's just going to create more. And I think the research on elk or wolves killing elk. I mean, there's wolves in Idaho, there's wolves in Montana. There's still a lot of elk in those states. So will it have an immediate impact? Maybe. I think the bigger issue for Colorado was the livestock. It's, these wolves are going to start mowing down cows and sheep because these animals are not, equipped. If you, where we hunt, Hunter, you can think about how many moo cows we see. And I know you would probably like to kill every one of them since
I wouldn't kill one of those.
you don't have you haven't had great interactions with them.
I'm vegan.
But if you were to think about if you were a wolf, like, are you going to try to chase that elk up a mountain, or are you going to kill that big fat cow that just stands out in the field every day and never moves? So
I'd kill the calf elk in the middle of the winter is what I'd go for. The easy target.
Yeah. So,
but I do think there's a lot of data out there too that shows a decline in elk herds. As far as I think Idaho's a big one, and I even saw something today within Yellowstone. I don't know how true it is. It was on Rocky Mountain. What is it? Elk Foundation. I think they have a website out there. I was looking at an article there, and they have data to back up that the elk herds declined with the introduction of wolves, which was it 95 that they reintroduced them to the park, somewhere around that region. So I don't know. I definitely think it's going to have a huge impact. Like you said, it's not going to be right away. It's going to be a couple of years before you see it and they multiply a little bit better, but it's just going to make things a little bit tougher for us hunting wise. That's for sure.
Maybe in 10 years, we'll be able to draw a wolf tag. We'll be able to go out and.
I don't see that happening in Colorado, but I could, the other states, Wyoming already does it, don't they?
Yeah, I doubt you'll be able to. They won't even let you spring bear hunt in Colorado. But I know there's a lot of states that do it. I mean, those are, I don't know, it'd be pretty cool.
You said Idaho, was it Idaho had a bounty on them? Do you know, is that true or are you making that up?
No, Idaho and Montana, they have a bounty.
Mm-hmm.
How does that work? Because that sounds like a pretty cool opportunity.
I mean, we used to have a bounty, and in Pennsylvania. I don't know if they still do it or not, but for coyotes. And if you brought a pellet into the game commission, they would give you $25 right there just for taking care of a
Really?
problem.
Yeah, I don't know how it works. I haven't looked into it too much, but I have looked into it enough to know there is a bounty. I don't know if it's an organization that's paying it, if it's the state, but I do know it depends on what area you're in. In Montana and Idaho, they have different regions. So if you're like in a high depredation region and you kill a wolf,
Yeah.
there's a
Bigger
bounty
reward. Nice.
Mhm.
All right. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this Wolf Talk, Wolves and Waterfowl episode.
Wolves and
Jordan,
Waterfowl.
I guess you probably have a question. I see the question in the outline, but I have no way to answer it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you got some. You've been waterfowl hunting a little bit, Hunter, at least with me. But
I've been with you.
Chad, what is your funniest, I guess, waterfowl story that you like to tell?
I mean, I would say it's. I don't know if it was funny at the time or not. We were probably pretty mad, but we were out to this field back in PA. Me and my buddy one time. It was probably my first year waterfowl hunting, and I think I had like a box of shells with me, maybe. And he shows up, and I think he had 6 shells with him that he brought, like shotgun shells. And so geese start coming in. We start shooting them. We only allowed 3 apiece in this area, and start dropping geese. And we're about 2 volleys in, and got a couple geese down. And he's like, "I'm out of shells." And I'm like, "Whoa, I only have about 12 left." And so we had a couple more come in, and finally we have 5 geese down, and we need 1 more. And I look in my bag, and there's 1 shell left. I go, "Oh boy." And we had a single come in and did it right over top of us. I mean, right into the decoys. And I pulled up and shot a big old fat honker right in the belly and smoked him, and he just kept on flying. And we were 1 short of our limit that day. But I carry about 3 to 4 boxes of shells minimum. So learned my lesson.
Yeah, I know. Hunting in Colorado, I went through. That was the only time in my life I had to buy shells in like a case.
Yeah.
In Illinois, I would buy. You go to Walmart, you buy a box of shells, and that might last you all year. So going to Colorado, yeah, I had to buy a case, and I bought the cheapest ones. I think I was shooting Rios, like the cheapest ones I could find because we were going through so many shells. It was like, my goodness. So
I think I've had the same box for at least 5 years from the last time that me and you probably went.
Are they dry locks? You might want to throw those out.
I don't know what they are.
Are they lead shot?
I couldn't tell you, honestly.
It's probably what I gave them.
Hey, look, there's McKenna. Or a cat. What is that, Jordan?
Uh-oh.
Or is that? Have you introduced Billy yet?
I have not. I think that was just like the air pressure. I think someone
Did
opened
we
the
just
door.
Did we just have a ghost?
Yeah, no, there's no cat in here. I think that was someone opened a door downstairs and the air pressure pushed
I
that
think
out.
you've got a haunted house you just moved into.
Probably. Don't say that. I won't be able to sleep.
That we just got it on video. We're gonna be watching replay on that.
Don't show
Hunter,
me. You're gonna be screwed.
Hunter,
Yes.
do you have a favorite waterfowl story to share?
I mean, not really, no. I liked Tyler Johnson one time took me to Crab Orchard. Got up about 2 a.m., freezing cold, and he made the best breakfast of all time, like a gigantic scramble. He asked me if I wanted to eat breakfast. I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, what else are we going to do? It's not like there's any ducks. So he made this gigantic pan of like eggs and sausage and American cheese, and I'll never forget how that tasted. But nothing really funny other than I guess watching you. Was it your dog Win?
Yeah.
I think we had shot a goose one time, and one or two that day. And every time we shot one, you pretty much had to drag the dog out of the blind and show the goose. I mean, it would never retrieve, but you always claimed that she was retrieving, and you'd get pissed every time that I'd be like, she absolutely wants nothing to do with that goose. Like, oh, she knows what she's doing. I don't think so.
I will say that
Might have been blind.
she didn't like getting in the water. That was an issue when she was really young, was getting into the water when it was cold. Her toes would touch, she would just hit the brakes and go and crawl back into her blind. So
You have any funny stories, Jordan?
I absolutely do. We were in high school. Nico and Hunter know who Caleb and Tyler are, but I got a buddy named Caleb, and he is one of the largest human beings you would ever see. I don't know, how tall do you think he is, Nico?
6'5" or 6'6", brother.
Yeah, it's 6'6" at least.
Every bit of 6'6". He says he's 6'7", and he might be. He's 6'6", 6'7". He's 300 pounds, every bit of it. My other buddy Tyler, he's probably 6'3", 6'4". He's a big guy too, and
they needed to be playing basketball all the time. That's the height we were missing.
There was, and but they weren't. They were drinking beers in a basement duck hunting. And when I was in college, I loved nothing more than drinking beers in the basement till 3 a.m. And then we would get in the truck and we would drive to the Cache River. They want to blow up our spot, but we would drive to the Cache River and we would hike in about, I don't know, it was over a mile, I'd say. And we would put all our stuff on a deer cart and hike in. So we're hiking in, and we put our waders on. You kind of go through flooded timber, but it's only about ankle, knee deep. So we would wait till we got to the deeper spot to put our waders on. And it's probably 4 a.m. It's pitch black, and we got our headlamps on and put our waders on, and we said, all right. Caleb had never been there, and growing up, Caleb's mom had always told us that he can't swim. And we were like, well, to be honest with you, I'd never been in water deep enough that Caleb didn't touch. He was so tall. So we get walking, we put our waders on, we go walking across this big open hole in the middle of the woods. And I had been there before. My dad had showed me the spot. Tyler had been there before. And we go walking in, and we knew there was a beaver run. And if you're unfamiliar with the beaver run, it's basically just like a false bottom on a, riverbed. So you're flat. And then these beavers, they, almost like a deer trail in the woods, they wear out an area, but a beaver, they make a indention like this in the river.
It's a culvert.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it looks like. And it's real slick on the edges because they whatever they do.
They shaved it out.
Yeah. So, the water's about ankle deep, and we knew about this beaver run, and there's like a dead tree. You kind of got to go out of your way to get to it, but because of the roots in that tree, it creates almost like a bridge. And we said, hey, Caleb, you got to cross over here by the tree. And he was carrying our guns. He had his headlamp on. Me and Tyler were ahead of him. I actually had my dog, and me and Tyler crossed at the tree, and we're not really paying attention to Caleb. We kind of get up to a little dry spot, and we turn around, and we're watching Caleb come straight across the hole where we told him not to do. And right as we were about to yell out to him, because we were like, man, he's getting close to that beaver run. He was out there about 30, 40 yards. It's pitch black, and it's cold as can be. And next thing you know, his headlamp went boom, and just completely under the water. Just the whole thing. I mean, all you could see was his headlamp. You couldn't see him. You just saw the light, and then the light disappeared. And we were like, oh, shit. And as soon as it went, about the time it went under, it popped back up, and he was screaming bloody murder. Help! Help! And, I mean, he was bobbing up and down like a bobber in the water. You just kept seeing his headlamp come up, and you'd hear him, help! Help! And then he'd go back under. And what he was doing is he was on the edge of that beaver run, and every time he'd put his foot on it to step out, he'd slip and go back under. And he's screaming bloody murder, and he finally, you could kind of tell, you could see his light under the water. He had to crawl like on his hands and knees to get out of this beaver run. And I mean, it's late in the year. It had to be like 20 degrees. he comes shuffling over. We're kind of up on this high like point where we're only in maybe knee deep water. He comes up to us and he's cussing and God damn this, that. And he tries to be a tough guy. You could tell he was cold. And about 30 minutes go by and we started worrying about him. We're like, if he gets hypothermia, we had to call a chopper to haul him out of here because we can't carry his big ass. So he looks over and he said, well, I said, I'll give you my jacket. Well, I think I was freshman in college. I probably weighed 100. I probably weighed 140 pounds. Caleb's 300 pounds. And he said, what size is your jacket? I said, it's either a medium or a small. And he said, that ain't going to fucking work. So Tyler had to strip down. They had to split clothes. We sat there in the cold for about an hour. It started breaking daylight. These ducks are flying all around us. We got we got tree hooks in the tree and we're getting ready to shoot. It's breaking daylight and I'm calling. And we said, all right, load your guns, get ready. Tyler looked over at Caleb. He said, Caleb, where's my gun? Caleb said, what are you talking about? You got your gun? He goes, no, Caleb, you carried my gun. Where's my gun?
Oh my gosh.
Caleb goes, I don't got your gun, dude. You carried your gun. And I'd say, Caleb, you carried his gun and your gun. So we shot a volley of ducks. We said, oh, no, maybe we think we know where his gun is. So we took a J hook off a decoy. We walked out there to the middle of that pond, and we spent about 45 minutes kicking the bottom of that beaver run in the deepest. I mean, it was so deep. And we finally found his gun, pulled it out of that muddy, nasty river water, got it up on the thing, tried to clean it out the best we could. And we kept telling Tyler, just shoot it, see what it does. And
oh my gosh, that's the worst idea. Don't do that, anybody.
He of course was like, I ain't shooting that thing, blow up in my face. So we made Caleb do it since it was Caleb's fault.
And he did it? He shot it?
Oh, heck yeah, he did. I mean, it looked like a super soaker going off, the water coming out of the end of the barrel. So
that's a no-go for me.
We killed a few ducks that day, and then we went back, got to the truck, and we were giving Caleb hell about it. He's like, oh no, whatever, trying to be tough. And we get back home. We get back home, and his mom asked how we did, and we said, well, Caleb almost drowned, and she about had a conniption. She's like, I told you the boy can't swim. And he looked his mom dead in the face. He said, Mom, I've never been so scared in my life. I'm 6'7", and I never touched the bottom.
Wow.
He'd
never been in the deep end.
He'd never been in the deep end before, so he found out that day. And every time we would go back, he always volunteered to take the mojo pole, and he'd be walking with his pole, making sure he'd never hit another beaver run again.
Jordan, I think you wanted to do this podcast just so you could tell that story.
I did. I love that story. I love
sitting on that. That was a good one.
I love that story. We still give Caleb hell to it to this day. We say, remember that day you almost lost your life in the beaver run?
Yeah, it sounded pretty good.
It's a pretty good story. Jordan's told me a couple of good Caleb stories.
Yeah, I got a lot of them.
He's got a couple of them.
Got a good one.
You have one of them in mind?
No. Maybe another time.
Maybe another time. Maybe we can have Caleb on.
He would love that. I think I might be in Arkansas with him this weekend. So maybe.
Well, you need to be back by the 10th. Next Wednesday, we're going to have Blake Wallerman in. We got some questions to ask him with things pertaining to videography, photography, and the outdoor industry. So that should be an exciting episode. And we're not gonna wrap it up with Sasquatch Tea, but that is our sponsor. Thanks for sponsoring us. So be sure to tune in next week. Thanks for coming on, Chad. It was nice
Chad,
having you.
You want to give your page a shout out, Chad, for anybody listening?
Been slacking this year, but I have Feather Freaks Media on Instagram.
Follow Chad. He's got some really good goose hunting content. Like if you want to know what's going on in the world of goose hunting in Colorado, Chad puts out some really cool reels of just geese getting backflipped out of huge decoy spreads. Are pretty cool. So
there you go. Can you guys see that? You're getting teabagged.
There it is.
Nico wanted to see it, so All right. Happy New Year, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Everybody have a good one.